If you're after a high alpha, lower tier medium tank than you might see from some of the tier 10s, then you're in the right place. This is, of course, the T44. Now, the T44 is a tier 8 Soviet medium tank that leads on to, of course, some of the more kind of highly sought after vehicles in the 140, and of course leads directly onto the T54 and of course the T62A and the 140. So the T44, what is special about this little tier 8 medium tank? Well, it is the fact that you can load this 122mm 390 alpha damage gun that is primarily only let down by its standard penetration. But the funny thing is that you don't have to load standard in this thing. You do have premium rounds which have 247mm of penetration, and what's even better is they are of course faster shell velocity, and yeah, they deal 390 damage. So one of the best things about playing in the T44 is being able to trade with heavy tanks 1 for 1, and of course when you meet other medium tanks you're trading basically double for every one shot that you receive. So either way, the consumables, we're running full premium as you see. Equipment wise, we're using advanced optics, advanced loader and gun stabilizer. Gun stabilizer just so we get better accuracy, because the base accuracy of this tank is a little bit let down when it comes to traditional I guess values, but we're at 0.34 accuracy at 100 meters, which is pretty decent. You know, it's workable. There's no real problems when it comes to this. The only problem is as soon as you start moving it can bloom out quite a bit, which is why vertical stabilizers is actually really handy. Now, other than that, you do have, of course, the power to weight ratio of 19.91, making it really fast. It's got a top forward speed of 51 kilometers an hour, which is really nice, and you really can basically move around the map freely without having to feel like you're kind of locked into place when you decide to go on a flank, which is brilliant. 2,500 DPM is really nice as well. 5 degrees of gun depression does let this tank down, but then again, basically all of the tech tree vehicles in the Soviet medium lines do not have the best gun depression, and of course you'd have to look at something like the British mediums if you were after that. But the 5 degrees is basically the only bad thing about this tank, other than its armor. Now, its armor is supposedly trying to be somewhat decent, but the problem is it is not the thickest at all, and so you do get penned through the upper plate. The side armor can be penned quite easily. The turret can be penned by higher tier vehicles, things like tier 9 and tier 10, especially if they're loading premium. It will go through your turret even if you're looking straight onto them, which can suck. It has a little cupola which can be penned, but of course it's quite small, and most people will just opt to fire premium rounds into the turret or find the hull armor of the tank instead of trying to snipe that cupola. But it does happen occasionally. Of course, the good thing about this tank, not only does it have that alpha damage, but the view range as we've got it set up has 453 meters over maximum that you can get in the game, so therefore you start negating the camo factor that some other vehicles have when it does go above 445 meters, I believe, something like that, or 440. Either way, of course it's over that. And the still concealment of 306 with the way that we've got the tank set up is pretty good as well, so you can remain undetected sometimes. It's not every time, but it certainly can happen, making this tank really fun to play. I really enjoyed playing this entirely, and of course it was a good one to go back to, having played this as basically one of the first tech tree lines that I ever went down. And so we wanted to check out, is it still competent in today's meta of World of Tanks console with all of the changes, the new premiums, that sort of stuff, and with some of the buffs that it's received in the past. Maybe not super recently, but they did do quite a few buffs last year where they started looking back at some of the older like tech tree vehicles, premium tanks, that sort of stuff, some of the older ones that maybe had been power crept a lot by some of the newer ones. So it was nice to see them update some of these and make them a bit more fine-tuned, and that's certainly what the T44 feels like. It really felt quite nice to play. I was enjoying that 390 alpha for sure. But I guess that's enough talking about the tank. Let's see it in action and see whether or not it really does do what it's supposed to do, which is both deal damage and get some spotting. Now then, kicking it off, we have a game on Alamein, and this map is kind of a bit of a weird one for this tank. It can be really good in some spots, but sometimes it can feel a little bit let down by the fact that, you know, you don't have the best gun depression in the world, but you can certainly make it work and you can come away with a decent result at the end of it, provided that you do play these things how they're supposed to be played, in that, you know, you've got to try and brawl with them occasionally and try and work a bounce by kind of angling your armor, making it very difficult for your opponents to hit you, and using their mobility to try and out-traverse some of the people in the game. Now you can see here we're ambling along at about 40 kilometers an hour, bearing in mind we are going up a slope, maybe slightly less, like 38, but you know, we're getting there. And then of course as soon as we get on the flat, it starts racking up to that 50 to 51 kilometers an hour top speed that you do have, and it will maintain this against basically all of the flat terrain types, and of course going down a hill even faster than that. But as we kind of push into this location where we are now, we can hopefully get some shots onto the center, or maybe find some shots up against opponents. Now this battle ended up lasting a little longer than we were hoping, primarily down to the fact that, you know, we have to attempt to get a bit of kind of damage late on, because, you know, sometimes the games don't go perfectly. You do have to use alternate methods to try and get your damage, especially in tight games, and this was fairly close towards the end, so yeah, it should be quite a good one to actually look through and watch. But as you see here, just trying to use the kind of knowledge of, yeah, we can't get the gun depression, but you can use certain tactics, like for example wedging yourself up to increase your gun depression, because of course the back end of your tank is further up, therefore you're leaning down, and therefore you can get shots on people. Most people do not do this in the game, and you can often find a hell of a lot more shots if you do it. So highly recommend using that when you can. Obviously don't go like, you know, upside down or something by trying to YOLO off a cliff, or you guys get the drift. Just use it when you think that you can, and just test it out. Obviously sometimes it isn't possible to do it, and so yeah, you are limited by gun depression, but you can see here a little ridge allows us to get that gun depression absolutely fine. It's a spot you can use in your own games regardless of what tank you're playing in. But yeah, hopefully that gave you a little indication as to some advice for playing tanks with lower than, you know, 8 degrees of gun depression, that sort of thing, for playing in that sort of spot. And of course it applies to all situations, not just that one position on El Alamein. Now then, we've got a little bit of spotting. Obviously we have pretty good view range. It's not exceptional, and we certainly don't have exceptional camo, but in the way that we've got it set up, it's certainly not terrible. So, you know, you can make it work for sure. I'm hesitant to poke this Black Prince, not because it's a Black Prince, but because we don't know what sort of thing is going to be camping on their ridgeline behind, because they can shoot you from there. So things like TDs, Scorpion Gs, SU-130 PMs, if you get hit by one of those, it feels rough. So we don't want to be getting hit by those. But you can see here, it is in fact a T-34-2. And then we get hit by the enemy artillery, but luckily not penned, because we have at least some frontal armor in this tank. So not a bad start to the game, only taking this minor amount of damage, and then again it's just artillery being artillery anyway. So we can start thinking about pushing up. There doesn't seem to be anyone in the center of the map. Our light tank would have spotted them, allowing me to come this way. You can be caught out here if someone pokes the corner over to our right, but obviously we'd been checking it out, making sure no one did that beforehand, and now we can start to hopefully farm. Yeah, let's not auto-aim because it's a Black Prince, and the Black Prince can quite farm you. Let's not do that. Let's actually aim, and then of course in the second shell, 2 shells in a row, he manages to Amarak us. Yay, brilliant, thank you. Love that. Of course, the high caliber guns doing lots of, you know, module damage and stuff like that, working as intended. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. The Black Prince is a little pea shooter, and unfortunately he does get an extra one into us. Luckily, didn't Amarak us, since apparently that's all the Black Prince wants to do. Either way, a little bit of damage picked up so far, but you know, this is the sort of gameplay that you do have occasionally, especially on these types of maps, and that's kind of why I wanted to show this gameplay as opposed to some of the others. Now we get hit by this little Chinese medium tank, which is actually super underrated. I don't think people realise, but these tanks like the T-34-2 can have some pretty horrible kind of heat round loading vehicles, and When they do get the alpha that they do, the kind of Chinese mediums get that higher alpha damage. So you have to be a bit careful when trying to poke them, similar to this one. You don't want to kind of expose all too much. But with that being said, I'm starting to think, this game isn't going too well, at least in terms of my hit points and how much damage we've done. We've basically traded almost 1 for 1, and you realistically, at least with someone with the amount of games and hours that I have in this game, I should be looking for at least 2 damage ratio, so how much damage I receive versus how much damage I deal. Of course yours will be different depending on how long you've played the game, how much experience, how much you care about, that sort of thing, but ideally I like to think if we can maintain like a damage core / receive of 2, so you know I've got 1300 hit points, if I can do 2600 it's at least an okay game, and if we can average that, that will be ideal. But in this game you can see here the T44-2, we've got to be very careful, we're on low hit points, we can't really take another shot. I believe he can finish us off with just 1 shot, so yeah, we're playing quite cautiously here. I don't want to throw anything away. And rather than trying to push into this guy, I'm thinking, you know what, we probably don't want to be kind of just YOLOing in here. Maybe it's worth actually pushing back and actually dealing with some of the tanks that are going to be coming from behind, because you never know, they might start ruining your day. Obviously artillery is looking over here. Got the little highlight of artillery looking at us, so yeah, we definitely don't want to get hit by him. But T34-2 does actually give us a free shot of damage there, which is great. He missed as well, so yeah, not too bad. And so now it's time to kind of not push that. I'm not going to re-peek it. Of course we could get very unlucky, he pens us, or maybe he finds a little shell through our inner drive wheel or something like that. So yeah, let's not push that, let's actually go somewhere else where we can help out the team. And since I have no team support or anyone that is going to be able to kind of counter anyone pushing me, there's no point in being alone on a flank, so let's go help out the team. So this is stuff you can do in your own games. Don't kind of stay somewhere in like a last stand if you don't need to, and especially when you have the mobility that the T44 actually has, you don't need to do that. So, you know, don't do it if you don't need to. So either way, the great thing about this tank, other than the fact that, you know, you got that mobility, you got the alpha, is the way that it kind of feels to play. It's always enjoyable to have a high alpha damage tank. And the way that you combine that with the armor that the tank gets, it isn't amazing. I mean, you are going to take a lot of hits in these things, similarly to all of the Soviet kind of medium tanks in the game, but it does kind of work, and when you can get it working, it feels really nice to punish some of those heavy tanks who of course have much higher alpha than a lot of the other mediums. For example, the Centurion 1 and that sort of thing. Often you'll get kind of ruined by that. But you can see here we do get spotted. This is not ideal. There is artillery in the game. We are potentially going to get hit. You never know. And of course there are people in the field, so we've got to be quite careful. But I want to get a shot into this AMX, otherwise we're going to leave him alive. And the more tanks we can get out, the quicker, the better it's going to be. But he does manage, or a Crusader manages to finish off our teammate here. But uh-oh, please don't hit me. It doesn't hit. And then one lands behind us because I reversed back. So yeah, not ideal. But you know, 2,300 damage. We're getting close to that mark of you know, 2 damage to how much we receive. And we've probably done that so far, but of course we've still got 200 hit points that could be taken away, so we don't want to lose those. But the AT7 is out in the open. Can we get one into him? We're going to fully aim. The aim time of the tank is a little bit bad. It's not awful, but it isn't great, and therefore sometimes you can get caught out if you're kind of on the move at 50 and you have to suddenly stop and then aim. It can be a bit bad, which is where you want to kind of ease off the gas as you come to stop, so it's not as much of a bloom. You can kind of start aiming in as you're slowing down, and yeah, it will just make your experience a hell of a lot better. So yeah, just try and do that if you can, or move just slightly forward rather than kind of doing a sudden stop. As often people will be able to snap onto you. You kind of want to keep moving, but just increase the chances of you actually hitting whatever it might be. But this really is not good. There's an Iron Rain in the game. There's also that T34-2 who is out in the open. He snaps me with an auto aim by the looks of things, because, you know, that's World of Auto Aims, this one. But luckily we managed to get one into him, and he bounces off of me, which is brilliant. But is it brilliant? Because now it's a 2 versus 2 with 2 artillery that seem to be doing their jobs far too well in this game. But we got a little light tank who's over here. But the problem is our light tank, who is the only other player on my team, at least in terms of like non-artillery player, he is over dealing with the artillery, which means that because the Iron Rain and the T44-2 were over this side, it really is not good. So we're going to have to do something to try and win this game. Once again, trying to poke, probably not a good idea when you're only on 248 hit points and sitting in this sort of spot. You never know, the artillery could be a freak and manage to aim at me, even though he's got a light tank right next to him. It does happen, but hopefully our light tank's going to be able to remove both of them quite shortly, and we can hopefully come away with the victory. But you never know, it could go belly up in this game for sure. But we've done 4 enemies taken out in this game with 2,900 damage, so we've at least secured the 2 times damage ratio within this game. And so rather than staying where I was, where I could get pushed by both the Borsig and the T-34-2, I want to relocate because, you know, sitting in the same place can be a bit bad. But we have ourselves a T-34-2 who's been spotted and is most likely going to take out our artillery, and we're probably not going to be able to help him out here unless he does decide to come down the ravine and we can get a shot into him. But it still is a little bit lucky if we can do that, if he's going full speed. But you never know, maybe he's slowing down as he's coming around, not expecting me to be here. Obviously, you could see that he pushed up. That looked like a Iron Rain that's pushed down the hill. So yes, we are correct, and he is in front of us. Now the Iron Rain has 2 shots in this game by the looks of things. Now we try and go for a shot here, but oh my days, what have I done here? We've managed to knock down the only cover, stopping the Iron Rain from being able to hit us. Now the Iron Rain is not a fun tank to deal with, but what we're going to do here is we're going to attempt to side scrape out against him. It's the only way I can do anything to the Iron Rain. Now we're going to win by cap either way, so I want to get some more damage out of this game. We've loaded a HE. We auto aim in here because I can't spend too long actually firing. He's probably got another shell and he bounces because he didn't aim at 100%, allowing us to know that he's got 3 shells in the mag, 3 of them fired. He's got nothing left, and we finish him off with another HE round, dealing 400 damage roughly. And there you go, securing the victory up against quite a stiff opponents, to be honest, and me and the Hollandhund having some pretty good games, with the Hollandhund obviously farming up those artillery at the end, which was nice. And yeah, nearly 4,000 damage with 800 assists, as well as that 1,370 block. So if you can side scrape and people don't aim 100%, this tank's armor can work, but it usually doesn't. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself when we're kind of talking about this tank. But either way, yeah, a pretty solid result with me and the Hollandhund leading the charge, with the Hollandhund first, of course. But there you go. Hopefully that gives you an indication as to the T44. And yeah, I certainly really enjoyed this vehicle, and we had multiple 3.5k plus games in this tank, and it was a pleasure to try out again after so many years of not playing it, probably like 6 years of never playing this tank. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like it. But if you want more videos like this, then there's the gameplay and tank reviews, which this will be a part of, as well as the how to get better at World of Tanks playlist as well, which covers loads of different guides. It's not necessarily as kind of tongue-in-cheek as how to get better. It's more of a case of like different aspects about the game, how you can use them to your advantage and stuff like that. So you can have a look at either of those if you're interested, or check out some of the other videos on the channel. And I hope you enjoyed. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.